Jetta here, and I want to give my top 3 wishes for 2019. My first wish is that all Democrats stop taking corporate PAC money. We're the party that's supposed to be trying to get big money out of politics. So let's put our money where our mouths are and stop taking corporate PAC money. Number 2, I want the Democratic Party to give everybody who puts their hat in the ring to run for the presidency an equal voice. Let everybody have the ability to be a part of the debates, and don't rig it like you did against Bernie Sanders. And last, my third wish is that Donald Trump gets his head out of his ass and starts being president for all of the people in this country, not just the top 1% Republicans. And oh, by the way, go visit the troops. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.
Hey, Ojeda gets it started. Here come Ojeda. So we're doing Young Turks Progressive Agenda 2019 special coverage here. We're gonna do it for 3 hours, and you're gonna love it, okay? I'm channeling Ojeda. Okay, so a lot of people sent in videos, and we'll be on the program later as well. So Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Randy Bryce, Richard Ojeda, as you just saw, Ro Khanna, Rosaria Dawson, so many others to tell us what they think we should fight for. And one of the things that I want to do in this show, guys, is get, by the end, a sense of where the progressive community is. And it ranges, and we've got a lot of different folks with different ideas on what should be our priorities, and to what degree should we fight with the Democratic establishment. If that's necessary, I got news for you, it's necessary, okay? And Ro Khanna is gonna talk about that in a little bit too. He's one of the strongest progressive fighters in Congress. Pramila Jayapal is gonna show up. Raúl Grijalva, Brent Welder, Abdul El Said, and so many others are coming here. Ben Jealous, former head of the NAACP, one of Bernie Sanders' strongest supporters, just ran for governor of Maryland. You'll also hear from him. So we also have almost all of our hosts here to hear from them as well. And Jimmy Dore and Steve O start the proceedings with me. The aggressive progressives are here, which makes sense if you're trying to figure out what the progressive agenda is. Now, before I even get to Jimmy and what his agenda is, I want to play video 8 just to rile him up. Okay, this was from the end of the Young Turks show that we just did. This is CNN explaining the top 10 Democratic nominees in their opinion. Let's look at, in a second, at what number 4 is going to be. Now, for a lot of you watch the regular show, you know it's Cory Booker. I told Jimmy it's Cory Booker, but I especially want him to see the video, just to have it great on his nerves. So this will be fun, let's watch.
Cory Booker. Cory Booker, I mean, if you've been following politics for a while, right? Cory Booker is someone, a name that you've known, the former mayor of Newark. His detractors perhaps would call him a dreaded neoliberal. That's a word, and they put it in quotes and it's big and scary. But he's actually had a pretty anti-Trump record. He gets his name out in the press pretty well. He's very personable. More than that, in the state of New Hampshire, Ray Buckley, who's the chairman up there, said, hey, there's no one who did more for our party in this midterm election than Cory Booker did. And New Hampshire is, of course, a very important state.
Wow, it's good. First of all, I didn't know Freddie Prinze Jr. was into politics, so that's good to see him getting involved. And the reason why neoliberal people use it as a bad thing, it's because it's the bad thing. It's a horrible thing. That's why Democrats are not calling themselves progressives, and they're even Hillary Clinton. They're not calling themselves neoliberals. They're not even calling themselves liberals anymore. So that guy who CNN brought out to be an analyst isn't out of touch, probably in the upper 5%. And again, that's why you don't learn anything from watching CNN most of the time.
So that's Harriet Ton from, he used to be with 538. And it's all in the self-selection, right? It's how do you pick the people who are gonna be on air? So at 538, they actually do have a bunch of smart guys who do a pretty decent job of following statistics and data and polling. Now, I criticize them from time to time because I think even they have a little bit of a bias they're not aware of, but overall they do a decent job. But they picked the one guy who's, with no data at all, going to tell you that Cory Booker is in the top 4 and Bernie Sanders isn't, and Bernie Sanders is right next to Amy Klobuchar. What a coincidence that they happen to find that one guy with no data at all to be their data guy and tell you that the establishment is awesome. Jimmy, you're gonna be shocked to find that who they had at number 1. I mean, it must have been a real diehard progressive, right?
Can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
I give 2 guesses. So the first one is Joe Biden. And the second one would be Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Ding, 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 ding. We got a
It's
winner.
so predictable.
Really?
Okay, Joe Biden was number 3. Kamala Harris was number 1.
Number 2, Elizabeth Warren?
No, she was, I think, 5th. Number 2 was Beto O'Rourke.
Oh, no. Oh, no. So there's yes, he's more progressive than, first of all, I love how they go, hey, we'll get Beto O'Rourke. Look how successful he was. He lost. Yeah, but he did really well when he was losing to a guy who also lost to Donald Trump. That's how successful Beto O'Rourke was. He couldn't beat the guy who lost to Donald Trump. So, by the way, not as progressive as people think Beto O'Rourke is.
Yeah, that's the issue. I mean, look, it's funny. I have waned on Beto O'Rourke as he revealed more and more of his conservative positions as he was trying to win in Texas. That's not how you win.
That's not how you win.
And he almost had it. He almost had it, right? If he just stuck with his progressive positions, that's what got him all the money. That's what got him all the volunteers. That's got him had all the momentum. And then he ran himself into a brick wall by going, well, I mean, of course I would support the fossil fuel companies, just not quite as much as Ted Cruz. Well, of course I would in favor of corporate tax cuts, but not just quite as much as Ted Cruz, right? And so,
of course, I'm in favor of Benjamin Netanyahu and AIPAC, which is what he tweeted that out.
That's right. And so, as our interest in Beto O'Rourke went down, proportionally, the mainstream media's interest and the establishment interest went way up. They're like, "Oh, Beto, okay." Like when he was running with no corporate PAC money, they're like, "Ah, that's cute, that's cute." Then he raised a lot of money. They're like, "Wait, money? Okay, now we're paying attention, right?" And then he became more conservative, and they're like, "No." All of a sudden, number two, okay. Bernie Sanders is at 6, Beto's at number 2. Come on. Okay. Anyway, so Jimmy, let's get to the heart of the matter. Steven, we'll bring you in a sec. What do you think should be the progressive priorities next year?
Well, I think they already missed the big priority, and the big priority would have been to somehow get Nancy Pelosi to step down as chairman because you wouldn't support her. But that's passed, right? So talk about taking the wind out of progressive sails. Seeing progressives get behind Nancy Pelosi completely took the wind out of my sails. And if I represent anybody, then they took away a lot of wind out of a lot of sails. So what they should be doing is now exposing the Republican Party. You know, when Donald Trump ran, he ran as a populist. He even went to the left of Hillary Clinton on health care. He promised health care for everyone, and the government was going to pay for it. So what they should be doing right now is passing Medicare for all in the House, and then making the Republican Senate either screw it over or have Trump veto it. That's what they should be doing. They should be passing Medicare for all. They should also be passing a living wage. They should be doing that again, exposing the Republicans in the Senate or making Trump veto it. They should also pass a bill to, well, they're trying to end the Yemen war, but the Democrats won't even get on board. So what they should be doing is what Bernie said they should be doing, is trying to pass the most progressive legislation they could be passing, but because they decided to get behind Nancy Pelosi when they shouldn't have. You know, Nancy Pelosi made concessions already to the members of Congress. She made concessions to the conservatives. She didn't make any concessions to the progressives. She made a concession that she's going to do a rule that gives more power to Republicans. So right now, unfortunately, the progressive agenda is totally screwed because we went back and got Nancy Pelosi, who has already promised to push pay-go and that new rule of taxes that's already kneecaps any progressive agenda you can do. And what they plan on doing is fighting Trump in 2020 by fighting for the status quo, which was Obamacare, which leaves 30 million people out.
Okay, so a couple of things about that. Ro Khanna is going to come on in a little bit to talk about that vote for Pelosi and the Yemen war. He's the one that pushed it in the House to end the Yemen war. He did a wonderful job on that. They lost by 3 votes, and conveniently, 5 Democrats switched over to vote with the Republicans. And what do I tell you all the time? The Democratic Party is paid to lose. So whenever Republicans need votes, they'll find just enough Democrats to vote with them. If they don't need any other votes, like for the tax cut, the Democrats will pretend to be against the tax cut.
That's right.
Okay, but if they ever need them, like George Bush needed votes for even larger tax cuts than Trump, guess what he got? He got a whole bunch of Democratic votes, including Dianne Feinstein. So it's all, in a lot of ways, it's a shell game. Now, progressives claim, and good progressives and ones I trust, that there were internal deals made with Pelosi, okay? and that she also gave concessions to the left wing. But to me, the proof is in the pudding, okay? So that's what I asked Congressman Khanna about. You'll see that in a little later in this program, okay? And so we're gonna find out. And so part of why we're doing this show
what are these concessions?
What are these concessions?
Yes.
These purported concessions, what are they?
Committee assignments? Is that
Probably some committee assignments, but we don't know. That's the whole point. And I don't know. Secret. It is, but look, sometimes deals are made in secret, and as long as you get your objective, that's great. But my worry is that we are not going to get our objective. Now, there's good folks on that side who fought for that stuff behind the scenes, but am I still skeptical of it, even though they're good people and good progressives? Yes, I am skeptical, because I'll believe it when I see it. Are you telling me Nancy Pelosi is going to propose Medicare for all so that we can? Now, she doesn't have to introduce it, it's already introduced. It actually has a majority of the Democrats who have signed on as co-sponsors, should be able to pass fairly easily. Is she going to allow a vote? My guess is hell no. And at what point will progressives revolt and go, no, okay, whatever deal we had was totally illusory. So, and Jimmy, I share your frustration. What did the right wing do within the Democratic Party? They immediately exercised power, okay? They challenged Nancy Pelosi, so she said, okay. Why? The thing that Jimmy said is super important. They did a compromise with the so-called moderate Democrats, and the moderate Democrats wanted to allow the Republicans to introduce legislation that they would then vote with them to overrule the rest of the Democrats. Well, if you're the Democratic Party and you just won back the House, why on God's green earth would you hand power back to the Republicans? Because they're paid to lose. So they found a way for so-called moderate Democrats to work in a bipartisan way that Washington absolutely loves to rob us again and again and again. So I will believe that we have a good deal with Nancy Pelosi when I'll see it. I don't give a damn about committee assignments. I don't give a damn about anything but policy. So, I mean, look, guys, my point here is I know what the maximum is and I know what the minimum is. I'll tell you what the minimum is, $15 minimum wage. If they don't allow for a vote on that, are you kidding me? That means Nancy Pelosi isn't gonna allow anything. And it's not just Pelosi, it's all of Democratic leadership. Steny Hoyer is even worse than her. And so if they don't allow for that vote, that means, just kidding, we're all Hillary Clinton, we're all the establishment, and we're never gonna do a goddamn thing. At that point, Ocasio-Cortez, Ro Khanna, and the others have a decision to make. I think I know what they're gonna do, but my guess is they're gonna revolt, okay? It's an informed guess. We're gonna hear from Ocasio-Cortez in a minute as well. But before we go to that, Steve, what's your take?
Yeah, so my take on this is that it's very simple if they want to win elections. There are two issues that resonate with everyone, and we discussed it right here. One is Medicare for all, and the other one is a minimum wage, a living wage. So if you go back to the big Senate race in Alabama, and Doug Jones won. Well, why did he win? He had a record number of African Americans come out and vote. I think they came out at a higher number than they did even for Obama. And when you ask them, why did you come out? Why did you go through all this effort to vote for this one particular politician? It was unanimous. It was for two issues. They wanted Medicaid expansion in Alabama, and they wanted a $15 minimum wage. People are not asking for a lot. These are basic necessities. And it's so easy to deliver this, but we just refuse to do it. We don't have the political will. So if Democrats said, we are the party that will give you Medicare for all, and we're the party that's gonna give you a $15 minimum wage, they could sweep across the country. Republicans favor Medicare for all. Republicans do. I mean, this is not a controversial issue. This is only controversial in the halls of Congress because our representatives don't represent us. They represent healthcare companies and other industries. So if this is really about representing people and winning, the formula is so straightforward and so simple.
They get the mainstream media to repeat things that are preposterous. The other day, there was an article that Anna and I covered on the show where they talked about Medicare for all being up until recently, a fringe movement, okay? 70% of the country wants Medicare for all. How could 70% be fringe? Like, I mean, that is so irrational. And then they say Trump lives in an alternate reality.
Right?
And he does, but so does the mainstream media.
Yes.
They live in an alternate reality where 70% of the country is fringe. Why do they think that? There's a real reason why they think that. They think that because everyone they know is super rich and part of the elite and the establishment. So they think, well, none of us like it. It's super fringe to us. We don't need it. We all have amazing healthcare.
It's so deeply frustrating because asking for universal healthcare is not asking for something that's impossible. Where in the world can you find an example of this happening, right? It's all over the world. It's basically every single developed nation has some version of this. We are the only country that doesn't have it. And even me, okay, so for me, okay, I work here at TYT. TYT has excellent healthcare. I have to go to the dentist tomorrow to get a crown. And I have it's literally called the Platinum Plan here at TYT. It covers 50% of some dental procedures. So my crown's gonna cost about $1,200.
Jesus.
I have to pay $600 out of my pocket to get this thing done. So I can afford it, but what if I can't? What if I'm on minimum wage, or I'm one of the 70% of Americans making $50,000 a year? I have to choose between getting food for my kids, getting medication for my wife, or getting a crown. I'm not gonna get the crown.
Right.
So then, you know what's gonna happen? Then my tooth will crack even more, and I might get an infection. It leads to an abscess, and next thing you know, I have blood poisoning, right?
Yeah,
then I go to the ER, and who pays for that? All of us as taxpayers.
And that costs way more. And so Steve says the fact that they just can't believe on CNN in Washington that 70% of the country makes $50,000 or less. Because they know almost no one that makes less than $50,000. They're like, that's crazy. That's the fringe, right? The same fringe, 70%, right? And so and what do they say is the main criticism of progressives? We're not practical and pragmatic. Now explain to me how being against 70% of the country,
right,
and 84% of your own voters is the practical position.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can explain that. But the good thing for the corporate Democrats is that there's almost no one allowed on television to make that point.
That's right.
Like if any three of us went on TV and we made that point against any of the corporate Democrats, they would have no answer. They'd be humiliated, right? That's why they've selected people like Harry Eaton to decide who the top 10 are.
That's right.
Okay.
They're chosen.
Yes.
That guy was chosen by CNN. And as Rob Placone says, when they say I'm a pragmatic progressive, that's the new thing. I'm a progressive, but I'm pragmatic, meaning Medicare for all, no living wage, no end to the wars, all that stuff. But what Rob Placone says, there's nothing pragmatic about an incremental solution to a catastrophic problem. And if you're one of the 30 million Americans who don't have health care right now, they're not willing to defend Obamacare. That still leaves them out. 30 million Americans. So that's all the Democrats are offering people is the status quo. The status quo is a losing argument.
Let's watch Ocasio-Cortez. She sent this in for you guys so that the Young Turks viewers can see it.
Hello, TYT. We're getting our fireside chat on because we need to talk about what the progressive movement is going to be about between now and 2020 and beyond. We have a huge 2 years ahead of us, and it's going to be full of commitments to healthcare, Medicare for all, a $15 living wage, a Green New Deal, and so much more. We need to center the conversation, and we have to command the conversation in the next 2 years. We need to make sure, and it's our responsibility, to make sure that 2020 is about criminal justice reform, it's about a Green New Deal, it's about a living wage, and it's about getting us to the future, because if we're not controlling the conversation, then people in the top echelons of power will be controlling that conversation, and that's not where it belongs.
So she had a number of important things that she's already fighting for. She also mentioned, of course, living wage and Medicare for all, but she had a Green New Deal, and that is to finally do something about climate change and create jobs. That would be impractical, of course, to create jobs while actually healing the planet. And of course, instead of having a progressive in the Energy Committee, which is perfectly related to this issue, Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic leadership have put in someone who takes fossil fuel money, a lot of fossil fuel money, to be the head of that committee. Of course.
Shocking.
So the Democrats just did that. So #VoteBlueWave this is why That's why that grates on my nerves so much, right? It's like, no, it would have been better to not vote for Joe Manchin because the Democrats wouldn't have him to put on there. And they'd have to put someone on who was a Democrat who wasn't Joe Manchin.
Now, first of all, in the House, I think it's Frank Pallone and some others that are leading the fight there, the fight for fossil fuel. He also takes money from fossil fuel. So that's the House. And Jimmy's talking about Schumer's decision that he just made. In the Senate, the Energy Committee is going to be led by Joe Manchin, the worst of corporate Democrats who support fossil fuel companies. So they believe, the Democratic leadership, and Schumer is actually arguably worse than Pelosi, they believe in rewarding right-wing corporate Democrats and punishing progressives. So the proof's in the pudding. We already see it. They already started taking those actions. Now, Ocasio-Cortez added criminal justice reform, which is super important. And we're going to talk about that throughout the night as well. But I'm going to add my own. Look, what is the thing that all progressives say is the root of the problem? If you ask progressives and you ask them what's the root of the problem, they don't say climate change or living wage, etc. Those are monumentally important things that we all care deeply about. But you know the root of the problem is money in politics. Otherwise, we would have a living wage, we would have a Green New Deal, we would have Medicare for all, we would have things that are incredibly popular in the country. Why don't we have things that are popular in the country? Because we lost our democracy and we're now run by a bunch of oligarchs like in Russia or in Saudi Arabia or in China. Here, our oligarchs are billionaires that donate to politicians on the right wing and now, by the way, also on the Democratic side. In fact, Democrats got more donations from the rich in this 2018 election than the Republicans did. Now, that doesn't mean the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, in my opinion. Yes, they're socially liberal, so they don't hate gay people, they don't hate black people. I'll take it, okay? But does that make you a champion of the people? No, no. Is that good enough? Hell no. And are all these agenda items, they're all wonderful. But if you don't actually get the money out of politics, how are you going to get them or maintain them throughout? So we go all in on everything else. We go all in on Medicare for all. We go all in on Green New Deal. We've got to go all in on money in politics. And what is that? That is an amendment. And I get frustrated sometimes with progressives because even some progressives will be like, well, that's unrealistic. But wait a minute, you don't say that about every other topic. On the topic that is the most important, people pull up for some reason. And they go, oh, let's do a little thing. Let's do a little bill here and a little bill there and maybe a disclosure act that never passes. But wait a minute, 93% of the country believes that politicians represent their donors instead of their voters. I mean, an amendment is hard, but it's certainly made easier by the fact that 93% of the country agrees with us. So don't pull a corporate Democrat, establishment Democrat move and go easy on the most important issue of all. We must all fight for an amendment to end private financing of elections. Until we do that, yes, the Koch brothers, but also Soros, corporations, but also unions, and Mercer family, and the Steyer family, etc. Whether they're good guys or bad guys, they rule us. And I'm not interested in a fight between the Lannisters and the Starks, etc. We're supposed to have a democracy. And their number one on their agenda list should be to get our democracy back. That's my opinion.
So, Cenk, you're absolutely right about that. And of course, the fundamental issue that underlies all issues is money in politics. That's the reason why we don't get representation. But I want you to remind the viewers that passing an amendment, as hard as that sounds, is not impossible. In fact, every generation has passed an amendment except for ours. We have somehow gotten the message over the last 30 years that we shouldn't be politically involved, that it's not cool to be too demonstrative, that it's cool to actually not care and pull back and just let things be, that there's something wrong with protesting and getting your voice out. Because I remember, I went to Cornell. Cornell in the 70s was a bastion, 60s and 70s was a bastion of liberalism and activism and protesting. It was like the Berkeley East. But during my time there, there was a little bit around apartheid in South Africa, but after that, nothing, and it was deemed very, very uncool to be out there doing that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just for like weird hippies and druggies, and so that's a weird tangent I got on. But anyway, the point being, passing an amendment is not crazy talk. It's totally doable. That's something that we should absolutely fight to have.
Whenever somebody tells you something is unrealistic or impractical, that means sit on your couch, make sure you do not fight for that, because that's the thing that scares us most. If you think Medicare for all scares them, wait till you get a load of getting money out of politics, because they'd all be out of jobs. Because that's why on that issue, they're like, no, totally unrealistic. Whatever you do not fight for that. Totally unrealistic. Now, you want to talk about unrealistic? I mean, I tell you guys this all the time, but think about it, guys. How the hell could women get the right to vote when they don't have the right to vote? That's impossible. Impossible on top of impossible. And that was an amendment, and they got it. And they got it within 7 years from the first protest in the streets. Okay, it's totally a lie they tell you so that you don't act. Look, Wolfpack is taking action. And by the way, I know Democratic leadership actually fights harder than the Republicans to keep money in politics. I know because Wolfpack has their bills sometimes defeated, because literally Nancy Pelosi will call the state legislators and go, under no circumstances. You are not to ever vote for a convention. A convention would be real change. And that's scary, scary. That would change our Constitution. Yeah, that's the point of an amendment, right? Like, you know what else changed our Constitution? The Bill of Rights. Those are all amendments. Nancy Pelosi would have been like, no, don't do it. I don't want freedom of speech. That would change the Constitution. Freedom of the press, I don't want it. That's an amendment. That would change the Constitution. So wolf-pack.com/join. They've already gotten it in 5 states. By the way, they're doing a membership. We're doing a membership drive. That's part of why we're on the air today. But I'm going to promote their membership drive. wolf-pack.com/join. Okay, go help them. I remember one time I was at a meeting with the Wolfpack leader at the time, and a so-called progressive organization in Washington threatened us and said, "Oh yeah, what if we go after your donors? Have at it, boss. They're $10 at a time. Good luck. Go get them." Okay. The thing that Democratic leaders, unfortunately, in this corrupt system are most afraid of is you guys and change, that you would drive that change. So Steve's absolutely right. They've done it in every generation. And by the way, the Wolfpack proposal is the most pragmatic, realistic one, because more than half of the amendments passed partly because of a threat of a convention. When those politicians see that real change coming, they go, okay, yeah. I mean, of course, we meant to do direct election of senators. The convention was so close to happening, that's why they panicked. And the senators who did not get elected but were appointed somehow changed their minds and said, oh yeah, of course we meant direct election. Of course we meant that. So they will do that. And by the way, we will liberate them. They hate making those every day, making calls for 5-6 hours begging for money. It's gross. We have an auction instead of a democracy. That's got to be number one on our list. And Wolfpack already has 5 states join up. They're actually super hot right now. You know, partly the great irony is the Democrats hate a convention so much because what a convention does is it goes around Congress. It goes around Washington. That's why the people like Nancy Pelosi can't stand it. And you could actually get an amendment proposed without Congress if you go to the states and you call for a convention. So that's why they're like, no, that would endanger our power. We beat the Koch brothers in New Jersey. We beat them with a stick. It was easy. We got 200 people to show up to a committee hearing, and the legislators were like, okay, Koch brother lobbyists versus 200 young people that I've never seen in the State House before. We won easy in New Jersey. It got harder when the Democrats in Washington said, no, do not let Wolfpack pass any of those resolutions. So get on board, let's go fight together. And I don't give a damn if they give us permission. We didn't ask for permission. We didn't ask Washington. Let's go around them and let's win. The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.